Hey everyone, thanks for listening to another episode of Human Element. Today I'm speaking with Darren LaCasse, Director of Threat Intelligence, Detection, and Incident Response at Elastic. Darren, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Ben.
So why don't we start? Describe 3 key events in your life that have shaped your leadership style.
Sure. As I think about it, we're forged by the things that were painful and hard, and in the fires of incident response or whatever our roles happen to be. And the people and leaders in my life that let me down or weren't honest with me are probably one of the biggest things that shaped my leadership style, in that I didn't want to be that person.
Yep.
I wanted to be someone that lived up to what they said they were going to do and showed up for my team. The other thing that really sticks out to me is surprises or secrecy for no good reason. As security professionals, we often have an inflated sense of our role or who we are.
Yep.
And we're like, someone entrusted me with this secret, right?
Sacred value.
And it wasn't. And then when it comes out, you knew about the thing, or you could have told us and we could have been prepared. That doesn't sit well with individual contributors or leaders, right? As a leader of other leaders, my leaders would not like that. And the other thing that really maybe is more positive is I've taken a handful of leadership classes focused on being an empathetic or people-first leader. Mm-hmm. And those have really changed how I approach leadership, how I approach the people on my team, instead of just being a technology leader or a really good technologist that happened to become a people leader. Taking that and going to the next level and just becoming a really good people leader that leads technologists. And that's been the most impactful thing about how I show up today as a leader.
Awesome. So you mentioned, the love of our space for various bits of secrecy. How do you manage that with you've got a pretty good sized team, and I'm sure there's information coming from all kinds of sources with all kinds of different levels of sensitivity. I mean, yeah, we understand there's the whole classified world that has very strict rules and all, but how do you deal with that in your world?
I started my life out in the classified world, and so it's been a very different approach that I take outside of there, and it was hard for me to break away from that and kind of be one of those people that kept those things close to vest. Mm-hmm. And if you had my team here, they would tell you I'm an oversharer. But we have an understanding, when we're talking about things that are sensitive, those stay in the team. Yeah. We're all in the cone of trust or circle of trust. And I think as long as I continue to trust my team with that information and continue to share and they have respect for that, I will continue to do that. There's very few things that I won't share with my team. And even when I can't share things with my team, I will do as much sharing as I can to prepare them for what will eventually be shared with them. As an example, if there's something happening and they're going to find out, in 2 weeks, what are the things I can do to prepare them for that without even giving them all of the details. So how can we talk, not necessarily even around it, but build up so that when it does happen, they can go, oh, I understand why Darren was doing all of that kind of cagey stuff.
So kind of providing the situational awareness, even if they don't have the details.
Correct.
That's really cool. So that actually raises another interesting question, which is so when you're hiring for people, how do you, and maybe you don't do it during the hiring process, but how do you screen for that level of trustworthiness that you need to operate?
Some of the things I do is I like to probe at the events that they've worked on in their past careers or past employers and see how much level of detail they give me that they maybe should or shouldn't give me. There's an appropriate level of detail that you can give without giving away oh yeah, we should have been in the newspaper, but we weren't because we buried it, right? Or something like that.
Yep.
I've had that happen and I'm just okay, well, I don't want you to work here. And if we would never do that, but to go somewhere else and say something like that, that doesn't look good for anyone on our team or our company that we work at. So I'll do that. I will ask them, one of my favorite questions is, what do you do when you fail? Mm-hmm. Right. And I'm looking for something beyond I give up or I move on, right? Failure is a learning opportunity. And so what do we do? How do we grow? And so that's how I kind of probe at that to see how trustworthy are they from sharing, because, the people that they think would care aren't in the room. They're not on the Zoom call or wherever we happen to be. And what are they sharing? And then how do they approach failure? I think really gives me an understanding of their mindset when things go wrong.
So what non-technical skill has had the most impact on your career?
So I used to work at a retailer, and the CFO would get up in front of the company and she would say, your say-do ratio is the most important thing you have. So your integrity. If you say you're going to do something, how often are you actually doing it? And her goal was that it should be 100%. I think that's the thing that's helped me the most is my say-do ratio is extremely high. It's probably not 100% because I overcommit in many instances, but that personal integrity, your brand, how you represent yourself, how you represent your team is often all that you have to build initial trust, to build those relationships with your peers within your organization or beyond. And so just, doing what I say I'm going to do has been the most non-technical skill that's helped me.
Deceptively simple.
Yes.
So tell me about a mistake that led you to significant growth.
I've made many. From a technical perspective, the biggest mistake I ever made was turning on all of the snort rules in an IDS appliance and enabling email alerts for each one of them. I was at a Fortune 100. I did that. And I came in the next morning and there was no email for anybody for like 14 hours because we had to physically go unplug those devices in the data center. And it was like my second week at this job. I thought I was done. I was not, thankfully.
Yep.
And that was a great learning experience to kind of understand second and third order impacts of the changes we were making. Mm-hmm. But it's probably not the biggest mistake I ever made. The biggest mistake I think that I've ever made that's helped me grow the most, especially as a leader, is when I was working with an employee who wasn't meeting performance expectations. Mm-hmm. And when you're a new leader, especially in the technology space, I feel like we take really good engineers or really good analysts and we're saying you be the leader now, but we don't give you any tools to do that, right? And this was me at that point. And so instead of spending time to try and understand why isn't this person meeting expectations, I was just person, here are the expectations. I need you to meet them. And if you don't, you can find a new job kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. I was obviously a little nicer than that. But when we got time to the point where it's okay, we're going to formalize this on a PIP now, they blew up at me and kind of let me know I was a pretty crappy leader. And so it was a shock to my system, but it kind of gave me the opportunity to step back and go, oh, I screwed up here, right? I was not understanding where they were coming from and what was happening in their life. And employees or individual contributors and people on our teams are more than just numbers in Workday, right? They're people. They have lives outside of work. They have things going on. They have family. And so all of those things they bring with them to work and can impact it. And if we're not connecting with our teams as actual human beings and people, which is really easy to forget to do over Zoom or over whatever, it was an opportunity for me to step back. We ripped that PIP up. We figured out, options that were available through our employer to help them with what they were struggling with and got them back on track really successfully. And I have a great relationship with that person still, even though we haven't worked together for 10 years now. So that was my biggest mistake. One of the biggest learning opportunities for me was to really understand that, yeah, we're all here to turn out widgets or whatever our job is, but we're all people and we all have things happening beyond what we can see. And it's important that we just connect with people as people first. And if we do that, the work will happen.
Strongly agree. So, all right, how do you approach staying in touch with your people and where their challenges are?
It's tough. I work in a completely distributed organization, so I see those people in person once, twice, 3 times a year, maybe, mm-hmm. depending on their level. But I make sure to connect with them every week. We do one-on-ones. I try not to make them technical. I make it so that they can bring whatever they want to talk about, mm-hmm. whether it's, whatever their dog ate and they had to deal with, or, some project they're working on, whatever it happens to be. It doesn't matter. Some people bring work to that meeting and that's great too. I'll engage you that way too. But I really try to spend time understanding what's going on in their life beyond work and sharing what's going on in my life too, because I think it's 2 ways. It's showing the vulnerability to enable vulnerability on their part. So we do that. That's, one-on-one. It doesn't really build team camaraderie or team dynamics. And so we I struggled with this in the beginning of working remotely. When I was in an office, it was pretty easy to do team activities and stuff. And so we did like Zoom happy hours where we would play like the drawing game charades and try and guess things or things like that. And then we have a thing we call Do Things Thursday. And it started out with like, bring your tough problems and let's work on it together. And it still is mainly that as the idea. But we get on Zoom together Thursday mornings, my time. And we just sit and talk with people about like things we're working on, problems we're having, like with what we're working on, or an idea. Like, I have this idea, I don't know how to do it. Can you help me? And we just like, there's no agenda. There's no expectation that we're going to deliver something. We're going to just be together, be a bunch of nerds and hack on things or work on a problem together. Almost like we'll have times where we sit and we're just quiet, everybody working. And it's just nice to know that if you wanted to ask a question in the moment, you could just ask it and someone's going to be there.
There's an open room.
Similar to if you were in cubes.
Oh, that's very cool. So COVID changed a lot and not much at the same time. Did you, being a fully remote team, I was fully remote at the time with my team. What did you guys change to adapt to that crazy new world?
We were fully remote already, so we didn't have to change much. What we did do was connect with our peers that weren't already fully remote and talk about like the things that we do that are successful that help us continue to function as a team. And I think that was I hope it was helpful for our peers, but I also think it helped us really appreciate the way we work and the way we operate as a team and do it successfully already that way, and that we don't want to go back to an office like ever again.
I understand. Yeah, we I'll share from my side. We had quite a bit to do around. Yeah, we were fully remote to start with, and a lot of people said to me, "It's like, oh, this must be easy for you." It's like, no, this is a global pandemic. This is a catastrophic disaster. Not to mention, anyone who had a home office and was alone now has their family trying to, spouse is trying to work, kids are trying to go to school. I mean, it's a big change.
Yeah.
It was deceptively impactful, I guess I'll say.
Yeah, it was easy to kind of keep doing work, but you're right. Those secondary impacts, like I have 4 kids. 2 of them were doing virtual learning, and that was a lot of extra work. And I had a lot more interruptions in my office. And as a company, we did like family Zoom activities to like invite your kids to come learn how to draw, right? We had people who were artists and would share like, here's how we draw, whatever, draw a deer, draw an owl.
Yeah.
So things like that.
Oh, that's cool. All right. So is there an individual who drastically altered the trajectory of your career?
There is one person that I always think of when a question like this comes up. I was working in the help desk, like my first job, and I had built like my personal brand, I'll call it, within that organization. But I didn't have a college degree. I was going to college. It took me 10 years to finish my undergraduate degree because I was working the whole time. And I couldn't move within this organization without having a college degree. They were like, you've peaked, basically. But a lady by the name Deb Worrell took a chance on me and said, come work on our security team. I know you want to do that. So I moved into the classified security space. And she not only took a chance on me, but gave me permission to change things and said, figure out how we can do all of this better. I don't care if you get it wrong, but keep us moving in the direction of better. So she gave me enough room to run and try things, to learn, to grow and share that feedback. She said, I want to get here. She didn't tell me how to get there. She let me figure out that path. And I think that was one of the most impactful things in my career, to just see like, oh, someone trusts me. Someone said, I want to do this. You figure it out. You're the technical person. And so I kind of try to do the same thing now with my teams. Like, I want to do this thing. I probably have an idea of how I think we should approach it, but I'm not going to share that. I'm going to, let them figure it out. And if I think we have to course correct, I'll inject. But I really just care about that we get to the destination safely and in a, within some time frame. So
what's the most valuable lesson you've learned from either a security incident or an operational failure?
Rest, just sticking to security incidents. I've worked on security incidents that have spanned months of response effort before, and it's not fun. I mean, it's kind of fun, but
you get the hit of adrenaline at the beginning, and then you got to
keep
going. Yeah.
Yep. And so in the beginning of like many of these, I was like, all right, we're in this, we're doing it. And I would work, 12, 16-hour days and try to do a handoff, but you don't make good decisions. You don't recognize, what's actually happening as well when you're sleep deprived. And so figure out early on how you're going to inject breaks for yourself and for your team to protect them, right? In an incident, saving money necessarily isn't the right thing to do, right? Like bring in those resources you have to bear, use your incident response retainers to get other people in to help you. Mm-hmm. And the first two month-long ones that I worked, I really burned myself out. I was super exhausted. It negatively impacted my ability, my team's ability, and my peers' ability. I couldn't do a good handoff. I couldn't take a good handoff of where we were at or what the next steps were. And so from a showing up and actually being able to operate perspective, figuring out how to get your breaks in and really resting during those time periods is the most important thing that I've learned. You can be super technical. It's great. But if you can't read the words on the screen anymore because your eyes are bugging out, you're not helping anybody.
All right. So how do you enforce that with your team?
Well, one of the things about my current team is that we're globally distributed. So it makes it pretty easy for us to have natural handoffs. Mm-hmm. We have people in EMEA, in the Americas, and in Asia Pacific. Yep. So we kind of have naturally following the sun models. And even for when we're not in incident mode, our on-call schedule is you're on call during your normal working hours. The on-call just keeps shifting to the next person that's coming on. So you're never actually on call at night. You're not getting 2 a.m. pages. You might get one on a Saturday during your normal awake time. Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the ways that we try to protect the team. During big incidents, we will extend, you won't work an 8-hour day, you might work a 10-hour day, right? So that we have a little more overlap in coverage. But it's really being forward in your communication with those people and saying, all right, Steve or whoever, you're done. You're going to be done at this time. I need you to actually step away, and reminding them. And if you see them working on something else or whatever, just giving them the simple nudge, hey, I know you want to do this. That other stuff is important, but it's not as important as you being ready for the next day. So,
yep. The urge to catch up on email when you've been relieved and go to bed.
Exactly. The email will still be there, and it probably doesn't matter anyway.
Yeah. Overcome by events. All right. So what's your approach to balancing technical expertise with the people skills to be a good leader?
This is really hard. I think for a lot of leaders that came up in a technical track.
Sure is for me.
I love being technical. I work at a technology company. One of the draws for me to come here was to not be a people leader anymore, actually. I left a director role to be an individual contributor again. And it was great. People are complicated, right? And technology and code is pretty black and white, pretty easy. But I always find myself back in the people leadership roles, and it wasn't too long before I found myself there again. And so for me, it's still dabbling in the technical, but not necessarily hands-on keyboard. It's the technical conversations. Yep. It's thinking through the system of systems that we have going on, and what does this look like? What do these things look like in totality? So when we build something, how does that fit into our existing systems, and what does it do from a holistic system and life cycle perspective? And so that's how I still scratch the technical itch, but still be more of a technology leader. And then from a people leadership perspective, I spend a lot of time reading. I try to just read every night before I go to bed now, instead of doom scrolling on Reddit or Twitter, or X, I guess it's called. And I spend time reading leadership books. I really try to take all of them with kind of a grain of salt, and combine them with my experiences and all of the other books that I've read to really shape how I show up as a leader. And then talking with my peers about being a people leader and what that looks like, because we often get distracted, especially, I think in security, probably all other technology disciplines, around the technology, and forgetting that we're here to lead our people to do the technology for the organization. And so trying to get my peers to do that too really helps me kind of come back there. So I try to lead a leadership book club internally. And when new internal trainings for people leaders show up, I'm highlighting them to my peers or taking them first, so I can say you should take this one. It's worth it. So that's how I try to keep the leader part going, the technical expertise, by just staying engaged in the conversation, but not necessarily being hands-on keyboard.
So adjacent to that, in the security space, there's not only the technology we've got to stay on top of, but also emerging threats, the threat landscape, whatever situational awareness, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
How do you make that balance work?
It's not easy. The pace of change it used to be weeks maybe. Now it's hours or minutes, it feels like. So I probably have a two-prong approach. One, I have a good threat intelligence team that is providing regular updates through kind of roll-up briefings on what's happening externally on a weekly basis, plus I guess probably you'd call it flash reporting for like emerging things that we really need to pay attention to. But I bake time into my schedule. So if you go into my calendar, it's like, here's Darren's Twitter time is what it's called on my calendar. And I go on Twitter, Blue Sky, random Slack spaces that I'm in, and just go looking for things that stick out to me in the technology space in general, not just limited to security. Because what I find often is technologists will be talking about something or posting about something that has security implications, but they maybe don't recognize it. And so if I can start to think about that and go, oh, we use that product, they're not thinking about it from the security perspective, we should probably go look at that. It's not perfect, but it's a really good break from the workday, but also B, surfaces a lot of interesting things that we maybe find days or hours before others are, and starting to look into them. So I find that really useful.
Do you find yourself collaborating a lot with industry peers in terms of like threat intel and comms like that?
I find that outside of a few like trusted partners or peers, people don't share, right? Even in like sharing groups where we all are supposed to trust each other and we're going to treat the data appropriately, people don't share. An example is like we're a member of an ISAC, and going back many years now for Log4Shell, we had observed Log4Shell activity like 2 days before it had become publicly known. And so we didn't know what we were necessarily looking at, but we knew it wasn't great. And we were on a call with the ISAC and we were like, we're seeing this. And everyone was like, no, that's, they weren't sharing. And so we came back the next week and, Log4Shell was well known and we shared more. And I can't believe that, of the 80 organizations that were on that call, no one spoke up and said, oh yeah, we're seeing it, or here's other things we're seeing, or sharing anything like that. So I find it really odd that we all want to share, but no one does, or at least they're not doing it in ways that are en masse. It's like, who do I trust? I'm going to share with that person. And that's as far as it goes. We have to get better at that. I don't know how to solve it, but I think we have to get better at that.
I definitely agree. I feel like group size has a pretty solid implication on that. Once you get over a few hundred, it's like, okay, those are some nice people, but yeah, it's tricky. Yep. All right, talk to me about your definition of an effective team culture.
I think it comes down to trust. Does your team trust you? Does your team trust that you have their best interest? And do they trust each other? Not necessarily trust each other to be really good at their job as far as like technical expertise is concerned, but to just do the right thing, speak up when they don't know. And that is, in my experience, you have really good teams when people trust each other. How do you do that? Depends on your team, depends on the culture they come from and their background. And so it's different with everyone, but it comes down to trust. I think if everyone trusts each other, they feel safe in asking questions. They feel safe in pushing back and challenging assumptions. You've got a good thing. Whether or not they want to talk with each other about, the things their cats are doing or their kids are doing is one thing. But if they trust each other, they feel safe pushing back to anybody, right? Not just even me, but like to my boss. I think then we've built a really good team because maybe they don't trust that my boss wouldn't push back on them or be angry or something, but knowing that I'll have their back to protect them too is important. How do you build that? We have to demonstrate it, right? And you have to show by example that the first time it happens, it might be scary for someone. You have to demonstrate it yourself by pushing back, up and out as well. And that can be scary, especially if you don't know who you're pushing up or back against at that point and you haven't built that relationship. But I think you have to do it. And if the feedback you get or you get like reprimanded, maybe the culture of the organization as a whole isn't someplace you want to be, right? And that could be an indicator that it's never going to be a healthy or a safe place to work.
Sometimes you've got to recognize it's a problem you can't fix.
Yes.
So is there any common leadership advice? You said you read a lot of management books that you'd like to kind of debunk in the context of cybersecurity?
I think if we just go back to good engineers, good analysts make good leaders, that's not true. But I think a lot of people feel that that's where you need to go. Like if you want to get promoted, you want to make more money, you want to have a bigger impact, whatever it is that motivates you. And getting career paths that allow people to stay technical, right? So it doesn't end at senior, it goes to principal or distinguished or whatever it is in your organization, is important so people can see that there's a path for them. But nothing is really sticking out like from a book that makes me go, no, that's blatantly wrong. I think generally, especially from like books that are published by big publishing houses, there's always some grain of truth or some example that can be related back to and can be used to apply to your organization. I don't think there's anything I would say is blatantly wrong.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the books that outline the why. So you by the end of it, you understand kind of why they're giving that advice, and that for me helps tremendously in terms of, all right, in that context that makes sense, but that doesn't make sense in this context, and you've got a little more flexibility.
Yes.
All right. So do you have any mental models you like to use when making big decisions in your organization?
Yeah, I try to keep it simple. If you're familiar with the Eisenhower matrix, so like high effort, high reward, or low effort, high reward, like we're going to obviously, well, maybe not obviously for some people, but in my mind, it's obvious we're going to pick the low effort, high impact, high reward paths first. Whether we're working on a security incident or implementing a new technology or a new process, we're going to start there. We're going to get those quick wins. We're going to get the feel goods out of them to help build the momentum from the flywheel to keep going forward on the other aspects of whatever it is that we're working on. And so the Eisenhower matrix is how I start thinking about those things. If they get really big or really involved, we might have to, figure out monetary impact or things like that.
Sure.
But really it all comes back down to that, how much effort is it going to take and how much bang are we going to get for that bucks?
Okay. So if you could travel back in time and encounter yourself 20 years ago, what advice would you give?
This might be counterintuitive, but I would say go slower and put your ego aside. When I was starting out, like I said, I didn't have a college degree, and I felt like I was always having to prove myself for not having a college degree around all of these people who had college degrees. And so I was always trying to prove that I was the best or better than someone else and not taking the time to learn from the people around me that had done this before, which I really think later in my career maybe slowed things down, but it definitely made things go faster at the beginning. But I didn't have all of the tools in my toolbox to be there at that point then, if that makes sense, right? I had gotten there, but didn't have everything to like really sustain me there in a healthy way, right? It made me have to work more than 40 hours a week. It had all of the things we don't want people to do. I didn't take vacation. I worked too much, didn't spend time with my family, all of that, right? And so now there are consequences for that. Maybe it worked out okay. Maybe it would have worked out this way anyway. Who knows? But going back, I would say, don't do that, right? Like learn, be the sponge. And you don't always have to be the best, right? You're going to be better at some things than other people and not as good at other things, and that's okay. Just have to recognize where you show up and how that works for you.
All right. So that sounds like something we encounter quite a lot, imposter syndrome. Do you have any advice on how you approach that with up and coming leaders in the space?
I think just sharing the story, enabling people to do the things I'm telling them or sharing with them is the most important. And leading by example again, right? Like, yeah, Darren, I see you're saying all of these things, but you're not actually taking vacation, or you're not stopping at 40 hours, well, then it doesn't feel like I can do that. So I have to also do that. I was recently on vacation for a very significant amount of time, and I've never done this in my life. And I came back and I was watching like the Zoom recording of videos from my team meetings and stuff. And the team lead that I put kind of in charge while I was gone, she was like, I haven't seen Darren on Slack at all during his vacation. I'm really proud of him. And I was like, all right, they're noticing too, like I'm not working, and hopefully that enables them to also not work or be always checking in and those things when they're on vacation or outside of their normal working hours.
That is sometimes a hard thing to model, but I agree. It's very important to demonstrate that. How do you approach mentoring the next generation of security professionals?
I've tried, and I've done a few things in this space. I was a teacher, and I found that really valuable for myself. I hope my students found that valuable as well. And taking, textbook, how to do security things and making it real and providing examples from my real work was, I think, one of the most impactful things for those students. I used to lead a whole bunch of local meetup groups. Then COVID happened and we couldn't do that anymore. And we never really restarted, which is kind of sad because we had a pretty good group of folks. But what I find most impactful or most helpful in this space is just the personal connection with people. So whether it's at work, previous colleagues, just having the personal connection and listening to what they're struggling with, working on, wondering about, want to do, and not even giving them advice. Because what I have found is that most people I talk to in this manner have an idea already. They just want to validate it. They want to say, I want to do the thing. And so by asking them more questions and kind of pulling at all of the strings that they're laying out there, helping them just kind of unlock that themselves and then give them, if there's advice or guidance or connections we can make with other people, great. But just helping them realize that themselves. And I've found through the power of LinkedIn, handfuls of my previous colleagues have people that they want to mentor in their organizations that say, hey, go talk to Darren. Maybe he can help you, or he can be someone you can talk to about what you want to do in your career or what career paths are available. And so for all the shade maybe LinkedIn gets in the security community, I found it really helpful to create connections that maybe wouldn't have existed before, especially for new folks coming up in the space.
Speaking of those new folks, you were to give a blanket piece of advice to somebody wanting to get started and kind of staring at the edifice that is security and kind of not sure where to start looking. Where do you go?
I get these, and I always tell people one thing, and it's kind of a broken record, but take care of yourself. But after that, figure out what niche kind of within security you want to learn more about. You could pick any one of like 80 things. I don't know. It feels like it's growing all the time. Just pick one. See if you like it. You're going to learn that you either like that space or you hate it. But you're going to learn about the adjacent spaces to that as well. So if you're in, let's say you're like, I want to do incident response because stopping hackers sounds cool, which, we don't do very often anyway, because it's not happening as often as I think people think it does. You might go, I hate that because I have to work a lot, or I have to work weird hours or be on call. But I see the people who put the manage antivirus or EDR or whatever. I want to try that. And so go learn about that. And you're either going to land in a spot that you really love and are passionate about, and you're going to go deep then, right? Or you're going to go, I don't like this. I'm going to try something else. And you're going to be someone who has really broad knowledge of a couple areas potentially, and then go really deep in one area. So I usually try to talk about all of the broad areas with folks that they could get into, kind of see where they start to ask questions, and then talk more about those spaces if I know about them, or get them connected with folks who are in them. Like, I will never talk to someone about what it's like to be a compliance person. I've done that. It's not my jam. I don't know what it's really like today. And so I'll connect them with someone that is in that, and that is their jam, so they can learn more about it.
Awesome. All right. So we talked a little about like modeling good behavior and not being online all the time. What do you do when you're not at the desk?
Well, I have 4 kids. They're all in sports. So I spend a lot of time at the ice rink or the baseball field. When I'm not playing taxi cab driver, I go biking, mountain biking or road biking, to just kind of stay fit. I love being outdoors. I don't know when the saying "go touch grass" came into popularity, but I feel like going to touch grass has been my thing for as long as I can remember, to just kind of disconnect, unwind, clear my mind, whether that's camping or biking or just going for a walk. So those are the things I do the most to just kind of disconnect when I'm not at work.
Nice. So what's the hardest transition you faced as you made your way up the ladder?
Stepping back from the day-to-day. I don't care really what your progression up is, if it's technical or as a people leader. I think the more you go up in either of those, the expectation is that you're doing less of the hands-on keyboard and technical work and doing more of the strategic thinking, the planning, and the advising. And while that is great, and I love doing that, the intrusive thoughts of, I could do this faster, I could do this better, I wouldn't do it that way, were always there for me in the beginning of this transition. And when I did make the transition, it was, well, at least I think it was because I was a good individual contributor that got put in a management role, and I didn't know what the heck I was doing. So I just kept doing what I was good at while also doing performance reviews. And so that was hard for me. And there are still times where I'm like, I wouldn't do it that way. I would be done with this already, but I have to take the step back and go, like, why am I feeling this way? Is it because I didn't communicate expectations properly, timelines properly? Am I keeping in mind what that person has going on in their life or the other things that are happening, right? We live in a very interrupt-driven profession. And so, yeah, we might set a really good timeline as long as no incidents happen. But if an incident happens, right, that timeline is thrown out the window, and we have to also remember that and adjust. And so those kinds of things, that was the hardest thing for me is like those intrusive thoughts of, I could do this better or faster or whatever.
I can relate. All right. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Before we wrap it up, if people want to follow along with your work, where's the best place to go?
I'm trying to be more prolific on LinkedIn. So you could check out there, but I'm actually most active on Twitter at Stiltsnet. It's always going to be Twitter to me. So hopefully it comes back to being a good tech hub.
We can hope. All right. It's been a really fun conversation. Thanks for taking the time, Darren. Let's keep in touch.
Sounds good. Thanks, Ben.